Alright, let's get this started. Alright everyone, welcome to another stream. Man here, and we're reading another book. This time we're focusing on Carnelia. This is gonna be a lot shorter than Red Moon Rose by a long shot. But more than likely the same amount of pages. Well, not the same amount of pages, but like you know. Maybe I should save this for another time. Well, whatever happened, happened, alright? You know what? And I got Heimdallr music, so shut up. And might as well just start reading, so... I stood there upright in front of the revolving door, scuffing the heels of my boots against the ground. Pulling slightly on the collar of my trench coat, I dropped my chin and gazed at my partial reflection in the curved glass. Aside from my short cropped hair, I wore a modest-looking double-breasted leather raincoat and a pair of special order steel-reinforced boots, both of which at first glance appear to be the most common of common apparel, yet were in fact much more than the naked eye would detect. You would have gone to Trista to read this? Say no more. Doesn't really matter the chapter, I just want someone... I need a save file within the, you know. My ordinary average appearance, it was of just as much importance today as it had been on any other day in times past. Not far off, the sound of footfalls echoed grammatically? I can't, what is that? Google Translate. I feel like I know the word, I just don't know how to pronounce it. Rhythmatically? Yeah, rhythmatically. Like the and the steady beat of a pendulum swinging back and forth as the thongs of was coming and going moved quickly along the cobblestone avenue, enveloped in a tingled silver by the morning mist. Enveloped in tinged silver by the morning mist. At times, the calling voice of a street peddler disrupted the steady flow, but as soon as the hawking cry faded away, it would resume its course. Each morning that I found myself setting foot in the Imperial City, I also found my surroundings to be unchanged and strained by the same somber tone of gray. Snatching up a magazine from the arm of a street vendor, I tossed a few mirror into the left and placed expectantly behind his back. The Imperial Chronicle, the magazine I read so often that even the ink bleeds were familiar. Roughly flipping open its cover, I scanned the headlines along the top of its monochrome pages, and suddenly my breath caught in my throat. At the very bottom of the local news page, I found those letters, that sequence of characters which I had not heard nor seen since the time that the life-changing incident. My eyes instantly gravitated to the spot, for a time remained fixated. Einzelnate. The very meaning of those letters became lost to my senses as I stood motionless, my gaze fixed on the same line of text, until it all seemed to coalesce into a single blotch of ink. Wow. It's been a long time since I read. After a few seconds of blank comprehension, my vision settled and I inched my eyes to the beginning of the article. As I began to read, my memories verged on a single point in my past and slowly started to run in reverse, heading for that fateful event 3 years prior when this name was first introduced to me. It was on an afternoon all those years ago, on a day not unlike this one, where the capital was overshadowed by its typical gloomy aura. I was a little younger than now, a 22-year-old man who stood silently in front of the boutique door as usual, double-checking his appearance before lightly treading over to Mitch's Imperial Factory. It was on this day that it had been arranged for me to receive a new job from Mitch, a shop owner himself. Although he was a drab, middle-aged man, and the Orbman enthusiast I, being the Orbman enthusiast I was, had found myself as one of his few regular customers. I headed down a dank alleyway, and after passing through a partially rotted wooden gate, I could see the soft glow of flickering orbital light just outside the entrance of the factory, whose structure was halfway below the street level. I first began receiving jobs from Mitch about the time when dissensions began to occur in society over the 100 Days' War. It was during this period that the relationship between the liberal kingdom and empire were at their worst and the importation of Orbmans had become almost non-existent. Conspiring with underground elements and planning a smuggling operation, Mitch made me out to be his accomplice in crime. For the job which I received by his hand, and which none other than that out of the carrier, being nothing more than a commoner in my teens at the time I met him, and a juvie devoid of any connections in life besides, I naturally jumped onto the opportunity without a moment's hesitation. Yet even after wow, what is going on with these 2 pages? I mean, I'm a bad reader, but damn. Even after relations with Liberal had returned to some degree of normalcy, I realized I was in no mood to give up my specialty, which focused mainly on the delivery of stolen goods. The reason being, there was no job out there which could bring in this kind of mirror this one did. Which an unrefined and inconspicuous... God, what is up with an unrefined and inconspicuous appearance? I had countless times before hidden items of various sorts in my hat and trousers and made my way hither and then liberal. My hat and trousers and made my way hither and thither between the borders of these neighboring nations. And though to my delight, my wallet had become increasingly laden with a bounty of monetary rewards, I had routinely changed my alias as a precautionary measure, so much in fact that these false names had built up into a quite a list over the last few years. I had been known as Phil, the frivolous, Rooney, the trickster, and even Chris the coward. However, Mitch always called me by one name, Toby. This was the identity I had used for my initial job, and the one I liked above all the others. In case you guys didn't know yet, Toby, this is a Toval story, or Toval stories from Mix. How do I describe this? This is Toval's story written by Mick. That's a good way to put it. Hello there, Toby. You've come at just the right time. Greeting me with these words, Mitch shuffled slightly in his seat behind the counter. The baked confection he had been eating was ever so carefully placed atop his lap as to prevent it from falling onto the floor. He smacked both of his powdered sugar-covered hands together with a clap, and a cloud of white particles puffed into the air. The smell of sweet spices and baked apple pervaded the dimly lit shop. Damn it. "We had an item dropped off no more than a few minutes ago," he continued, turning in his seat. Mitch reached back and snatched up something wrapped as an old magazine paper from off the shelf, tossing it to me, knowing full well I wouldn't get any sort of answer. I asked anyway. "What do we have this time?" Laying out my railway and airship tickets, Mitch ignored my questions and said, "Make sure this gets to the same place as always." In his slow brawl, he added, "It would be in your best interest to keep your involvement to a minimum by leaving this business side of things to me and focusing solely on getting the job done, Toby." He leaned back in his chair and let out a deep sigh, the balls of his fingers eating the bags under his eyes. Then once again his large hand extended down toward the unattended cake resting on his leg. Before the sweet treat could reach his watering mouth, I had already made my way out the door of his tiny shop. As I walked, the waste paper on the events of the book happen in canon with... Yeah. That's another thing, but I like my explanation better. Oh, I didn't read. This is a dramatization of one of Toval's stories. As I walked with a... Where was I? As I walked, the waste paper bundled package bounced around the insides of the fold of my bag. By the feel of its shape and weight as it beats steadily against my side, I can conclude that the object in my possession was probably just swag. Just more swag. It didn't make me nervous not to know what it was that I was carrying, for I had done this type of job many times before, and no matter what kind of trouble I found myself wrapped up in, I had always somehow managed to come out unscathed. In truth, my experience in this job had made me tough, and I had become well versed in the art of orbital magic. So it was that when I laid my eyes on the rough-looking trio at the station, I felt no more knots of uneasiness in the pit of my stomach that was necessary for someone of my abilities. The platform for the train bound for Liberal was a bustle, with passengers awaiting its eventual arrival. Seeing that the benches were so crammed full of people that they could have very well been a tin of packed sardines, I resigned myself to standing near the entrance as I partially waited for the train to come in. Twisting my body in order to move the bag of my back to my other shoulder, I noticed the figures of two men. Heads bent together and conversing in an inaudible tone, they stood just beyond the ticket gate, right away where the horse head of the Imperial emblem lay embedded in the grand mosaic of tiles. After a short interim, another man approached and joined in the conversation. From my own perspective, this was one ragtag group I most certainly couldn't have given a passing grade to based on looks. All three were extremely well built and sported the same haircut. To put it mildly, they stuck out in the crowd like a bunch of sore thumbs. Making sure to avoid eye contact with them as they glanced in my direction, I slung my bag onto my other shoulder and ever so calmly reached my hand into my pocket and ran the tips of my fingers across the surface of my orbment. A woman's voice reverberated within the walls of the station, notifying the passengers that the train had arrived. The low rumble of an orbital engine could be felt in the distance, and after a few moments, a large vehicle was seen rolling up on the shoulder. I muttered to myself, all is well, but the sound of my voice was drowned out by a din of the massive machine. Brakes screeched, and a flash of black light reflected off the surface of the giant iron beast as it came sliding in across the rails. The immense vibration in the air emanating from the moving locomotive and as its epicenter let me know that the orbital engine had been put into full reverse in order to decelerate and bring the train to a grinding halt. While being shoved to and fro by the waves of impatient travelers flooding out of the waiting area, I was swept towards one door of a passenger car. As we passed by the conductor, I caught another glimpse of the ticket gate. The men who were once there were are now gone, and the only thing that remained was the profile of the horse made of glossy tiles, glaring back at me in a shade of deep crimson. And the man. The train barreled on, almost flying through a thick veil of fog. Droplets of water splattered against the window glass, extending out like transparent veins that continued to wrinkle back and forth under the pressure of the swiftly passing wind. Placing the temple of my head against the glass, I stared blankly down at the tickets in my hands and rubbed two of them together between my fingers. I could be traveling by the train to the border cities, far south of its imperial cousin, and then to reach the liberal kingdom, I would have to transfer to an airship. Both my tickets were first class, but not at the highest end seats available. I was thinking that if that was what I was talking about, but I wasn't sure at first. I felt like I may have missed something there, like I missed a sentence and then, you know. Okay. The passenger car was nearly at full capacity, but for some peculiar reason, nobody had seated themselves in the spare seat next to mine. As I mused about the empty seat, it occurred to me that Mix may have purchased the spot ahead of time, leaving it vacant on purpose. There was no doubt in my mind that he was being paid handsomely to make sure this job was done and done well. Will you be traveling to Liberal Kingdom, sir? Right around the time my trip on the rails had passed its halfway mark, I was met with this sudden question and set up with a start. My eyes searched for one who asked it. There, standing in the aisle, was a single woman with a radiant complexion beaming down at me. She wore a coat with overlapping buckles secured slightly above her breast and appeared to be in her mid-30s. Gingerly bending her knees and pointing her finger at the empty seat beside me, she asked, "Do you mind?" With a tilt of her head, she indicated the rear of the Liberal Kingdom. With a tilt of her head, she indicated it's the rear of the passenger car where swirling smoke saturated the air and softly muttered, "The smell from the tobacco smoke is just dreadful." Wordlessly, I nodded and dragged my bag from its place on the floor, moving it over by the window to the opposite side of my feet. The woman expressed her thanks and to delicately sat herself down in the seat next to mine. For being a perfect stranger, she talked on endlessly, and I appropriately reciprocated the conversation by saying that I was on my way to Liberal Kingdom on business as an orbment specialist. Her story was that she was on a mission of mercy for the church and had an errand to fulfill in the border city. "Just so you know, people sometimes refer to me as Sister," she went on. "Of course, it's just a nickname." She recrossed her black boot-clad legs and let out a sort of suppressed titter from the back of her throat, and from the back of her throat, as she made a mention of this. Sister Cornelia was her nickname. We continued in this fashion, subjecting ourselves to a variety of idler banter, and as the time drew on, the sun overhead began to dip in its arc, crossing a celestial meridian and descending into the west. Each time the moving train cleared a grove of trees, the entire vehicle of passenger cars and all was bathed in a warm apricot hue, flooding into the cabins, creating a majestic spectacle. I gaped at the coruscating effect, and in doing so, locked eyes with Sister Cornelia. Right at the moment, the brilliance of the sinking western lights seeped into her rich brown irises, causing themselves to give off an exquisite rebuscent sparkle. The glance made me wonder if the origin of her nickname was somehow related to the color of her eyes being likened unto the luster of a polished cornelian stone. The train gradually began to decelerate, and the Sister Cornelia returned to her original seat in order to collect her bags. As a matter of habit, I checked my bag and orbments and found both a junk paper covered package and the magical device fastened into my trousers inner pocket by a series of chain stitches, exactly where how I'd left it. A woman's voice came over the intercom system announcing that the train would be arriving on schedule and that rainy weather was to be expected at our destination. At the conclusion of the announcement, a number of disappointed sighs could be heard coming from along the rows of the seats. Raindrops pattered against the window outside the looming silhouette of the overcast city came into view. The station signal lamp emitted and the angular light, which was scattered with a refractive effect by the falling droplets of water, and came onto a spine-chilling metallic sound, followed by the jolt of the orbital engine's reversing thrust as the locomotive at the front of the train lurched to a halt. Over the loudspeaker came another announcement asking passengers to ensure that they did not leave their baggage behind, and with that several people stood up and crowded into the aisles. Watching a station worker in uniform as he waved a small flag amidst the falling rain, I picked up my bag and rose to my feet. I crossed paths with Sister Cornelia as I attempted to step into the aisle, but when she tried to step outside and allow me room to pass, she suddenly tripped and fell forward. Grabbing onto my shoulder for support, she picked herself up, an embarrassed smile led me by. I gave her a short bow in line with the general etiquette practices, and headed for the exit ahead of her. Following my lead, Sister Cornelia shuffled along closely behind me, so close in fact that it felt as she was a step on my heels. Is it just me? Does it feel like she's trying to pickpocket him? Like, no doubt she already did with how she fell down, but still. Something about it just didn't feel right. Instinctively sliding my right hand into my pocket, I searched for my ornament, but the brass feeling I had grown accustomed to was nowhere to be felt. Called it! And in an instant, I felt my arm being twisted behind my back by someone or something with incredible strength. The sleek sound of a blade being unsheathed and then warning prick of the tip at my back indicated the seriousness of the situation. I have what you're looking for, Toby, whispered Sister Cornelia in an almost inaudible tone, her lips barely moving just behind my right ear. Let's not try anything either, shall we? I'd hate to see our afternoon spoiled any more than it's going to be. And to show that as she meant and business, Sister Cornelia slightly altered the angle of her grip on my wrist, causing an explosion of agony that she sent sparks flashing. Let me read that again. Sister Cornelia slightly altered the angle of her grip on my wrist, causing an explosion of agony that sent sparks flashing behind my eyes. Damn. I'd like to point out that I'm going faster in this chapter than, like in this book, than I have with Red Moon Rose. Sister Cornelia spoke to me in a tender tone as she sent a wave of immense pain rushing through the whole of my right hand. I won't have any trouble with you now, will I, Toby? She asked. Far from my eyes, brimming with tears, I nodded my head in consent as the salty streams of water ran down my face. Satisfied with my answer, she loosened her grip and I felt the pain vanish as if it had all been some sort of illusion. Ah, crap. With a wry smile, she further added, Don't get me wrong, Toby. I've been sent here to protect you by the goddess herself. This is what she said while instructing me to keep my eyes focused on what lie beyond the white. This is what she said while instructing me to keep my eyes focused on what lie beyond the window's glass. Yet there was something about the way she pronounced the last syllable of my name that really rubbed me the wrong way. Little by little, the line of passengers slowly began to flow out of the train car. Prodded on by Sister Cornelia, I inched forward while keeping my gaze on the platform through the passenger car window. Down the stairs, which led into the front ticket gate, were the figures of those men from earlier this morning. The three thug-like passengers who had been loitering near a large horse head emblem of Tal at the Imperial Station. A muffled laugh echoed from her throat, but as she too noticed them. Well, isn't this going to be a warm reception party you've got going on? Cocking my head, I quietly pleaded, Give me back my ornament. Sister Cornelia said nothing. Members of the crew bid us farewell as we stepped through the exit to disembark the train onto the lead-colored platform below. Angrily, I thought to myself, damn it, what's wrong with these fools? Can't they see what's going on? I shut my eyes halfway to protect them from the drizzle whipping against my face, and I unhurriedly descended the wet set of the stairs a half pace at a time. Sister Cornelia moved along behind me and at precisely the same length of stride. Below, the group of thugs waited expectantly at the bottom of the stairs, waited for me, no doubt. Competently, the rate of which I was going, I ultimately believed it was only a matter of time before I would be handed over to the enigmatic group. I caught sight of their soured faces at the distance between us, grew smaller, and felt the heat of my left hand and tightly gripping. Damn it! I caught sight of their sour faces at the distance between us grew smaller, and felt the heat of my left hand tightly grip my back. Tightly gripping my back, I grow intensively until my palm began to sweat profusely. Hitting the midway point on the stairs, Sister Cornelia suddenly whispered in my ear, "Keep your eyes on the ground, Toby." I did as I was told and kept my gaze down on the tips of my boots, seeing that into a darker shade ate by the rainwater. Then, and right at the moment I let out my breath, I felt a deep sense of pressure just below my shoulder blade as I was forcibly shoved forward. Droplets flew from my saturated fingers, and my world turned upside down as I tumbled down the stairs and back first into a group of hoodlums. With a muffled crunch, I felt the painful sensation of my ribs crumble under the weight of my body, and then return to normal from the I felt the painful sensation of my ribs crumble under the weight of my body, and then return to normal from their severely compressed state. Two of the seemingly military men were hit as it toppled down the stairs like an avalanche unleashed on a pair of young saplings, absorbed the transfer of force, and were thrown into a large puddle collectively on the ground nearby. Shrieks erupted from the startled passengers nearby, more shrill than a high-pitched sound of the railway brakes from a deceleration locomotive. As my world spun wildly about me, I lay there, the chill of tile seeping into my back. With a concerted effort, I rolled my eyes to the left, and where my arm remained in an outstretched state. By some act of the goddess, I had managed to keep my tight five-finger grip on the bag I had been carrying in an effort to get it up. I slid into a prostrate position, keeping my chin in contact with the ground, making a low visual sweep of the vicinity as if my life depended on it. I noticed that the military-like physiques of the men had vanished from view. The only figure I saw standing above me now on the platform was that of the Sister Cornelia, and on her back, and on her shoulder, as if she were merely hefting a sack of grain, was one of the men. Wait, she was... And on... The only figure I saw standing above me now on the platform, that of the Sister Cornelia, and on her shoulder... I can only picture what one of these men look like, but if she's that physically strong, man, she's like Aurelia. Turning in the direction where the train sat in its motionless state, she lobbed the unfortunate man down onto the seat of an empty rail track below. By this time, I had risen to one knee while keeping the other planted firmly on the ground in a half-standing position. The world in front of me, it was well swaying, undulating in my wavering eyesight. My head slowly rocked back and forth with it as the double vision of Sister Cornelia's boots approached me. Then with a strong grip, she tugged onto my hand for some strange reason or another. When she did this, I failed to notice the unpleasant feeling that her hand had tightly around mine and brought. "Let go, Toby," she instructed in an authoritative voice, nearly dragging me. She pulled me to my feet, and before long we were hightailing it out of there. Unpleasant feeling that her hand. Oh, let's go, Toby. I thought you had let go, Toby. The onlookers made quite a commotion as they moved hastily out of the way in a determined attempt not to be caught up in the middle of our flight path. The bag in my left hand swung helplessly, knocking against my thigh. After clearing the ticket gate, Sister Cornelia finally let go of my hand, but a sickening, slippery sensation came with it. Looking over at her, I realized that the stomach churning, slimy feeling on my hand had come from the bright red blood which stained both of her. What? I realized that the stomach churning, slimy feeling on my hand had come from the bright red blood which stained both of hers. She killed them? What? I feel like we're going too fast. What? I peered back over my shoulder in the direction of the platform as I continued to run, but the figures of those three men who had been waiting for me at the station were nowhere to be. Holy shit, she killed them! Holy shit, why'd she do that? I sat staring at a partially melted lump of butter on a stack of cold pancakes. Picking up a fork, I poked at them, and after turning the top of one over, I dug up the milky yellowed substance between the rubbery layers. In doing so, my interest in what sat atop my plate faded to nil. A hanging lamp dangled overhead, making a sporadic buzzing sound as its honey-colored light flickered, creating jittery shadows and distorting my vision within the inn. The pouring rain outside didn't appear as if it would let up anytime soon either. Bringing my face closer to the window, I peered through the film of water flowing down on the outside of the glass as I tried to make out the dimly lit avenue. Although the station house had sat right at the end of the road from where we were lodged, all that was visible was the side of the structure obscured by a shadow which prevented me from being able to see the platform. "There's nothing to be worried about," said Sister Cornelia as she returned, wiping her hand with a handkerchief as white as newly driven snow. Stretching the square strip of cloth out, she sat down and placed it nearly on her lap like a napkin. Then in a reassuring tone, she added, "We've seen the last of them for a while." Watching the tips of her fingers move as she smoothed out the wrinkles in the piece of fabric resting on her legs, I was hit with a sudden flashback, reviving the awful sight and uppering scent of the sticky blood which covered those hands not more than a few hours before. "How can you be so certain?" I asked, still having more than a few reservations. "Because that's how these types of crime syndicates work," she replied, seeming to know all the answers. The waiter came and set a plate in front of Sister Cornelia with a soft clink as the base of the glassy dish tapped lightly against the hard surface of the table. After smoothing the meat-laden porcelain plate closer to her, she licked off the sauce, now covering the tips of her fingers in an almost sensual way. She sickened by the bloody image already in my mind, and now the sauce. I tossed my fork aside and then leaned heavily back in my chair. The city outside began to fade into shades of gray, and by the time Sister Cornelia was finished tucking away her steak, it had completely sunk into the darkness of night. I questioned her again. "How can you be so certain that no one will come after us?" Using a piece of black crusted their bread to wipe up the last drops of sauce, she answered. Because that's how they function. One unit consists of 3 people. Then as if remembering something else important, she added, the group that was after you, they're a Jaeger Corps. The group that was after you, they're a Jaeger Corps? Which one? Upon hearing this, I recalled seeing some of those men at the landing port some time ago. Only the most renowned and skilled of mercenary groups have the honor of calling themselves a Jaeger Corps. Or at least that's what Mikta told me about them. They were soldiers of fortune who were said to be relentlessly follow the flow of Mira wherever that happened to lead. And it would stop at nothing to get it, even if it meant spilling blood. Warhawks, mercenaries without borders, and a group never to be get involved with, is what it's a habit of saying about them. Instinctively, I slid my foot forward and checked the location of my bag, like with the tip of it. It's quite simple, really, Sister Cornelia explained as she reached it as for dessert. You, Toby, are carrying something that apparently got a lot of people on edge, and someone's hired a Jaeger Corps to take you out. It's not me they're after, it's what I'm carrying. It's all the same, she retorted as she gulped down her cup of tea in a single breath. They're going to kill the carrier before they even think about searching the contents of his bag. A butcher kills a cow before someone grills the steak, not the other way around. Lecturing me all the way, Sister Cornelia took a glossy tallowed handled knife in a hand and sliced into her apple pie. The powdered sugar sprinkled on the flask. The powdered sugar sprinkled on the flaky crust danced under the golden light. I felt a stabbing pain of guilt would race through me. Just above my gut, unexpectedly began to think about what Mitch could be doing at the moment. But my brief period of rumination was cut short when I saw Sister Cornelia's hand stop cold. Staring into the darkness, eyes focused and intent like a hunting dog, she tossed something shiny onto the table and eventually rose up to her feet. There it was, my orbment. There it was, my orbment. Where are you going? Without pausing to answer my question, Sister Cornelia expeditiously fastened the buckle of her coat. You've got a good taste, Toby. One at a time, she set her heels on the chair and tightened her bootlaces, using the full capabilities of that ornament is no small feat. I think even more braces would be in for a real surprise if push came to shove with you in the ring. Growing even more impatient, I asked again, so where is it exactly you're going? That's none of your concern, came the answer. Suffice it to say, I will be seeing you again on the morrow. And with that, Sister Cornelia disappeared through the door of the women's restroom. As if exchanging places, 2 other men entered the restaurant. They walked directly to the table at which I sat and stood before me. Flashing the emblem on his crest and without making any sort of eye contact, one of the men said, "We're with the Bracer Guild. I apologize for disturbing you in the middle of your evening meal, but you'll need to come with us." Okay. So we're getting into some bracers, huh? I'm just gotta make it through 6 chapters in less than... how long has it been? 39 minutes? What is wrong with me when I read Red Carnelia? Red Moonrose. Granted, this is... I gotta see something. What was the first 6 chapters like? They're like 20 pages long, but it feels like I'm going a lot more easier with this than... Forget it. Okay, yeah, I'm on chapter 6. My ornament... yes, but at the same time, I feel like I'm breezing through these. And it felt like forever and a half when I made it to chapter 6. I'm gonna count out there, let's count it out. I need to count this. Like, yes, it's monumentally longer. Like, no doubt about that. But just from the first 6 chapters alone, we have 11. 12, 13, 14, 15. No, so far we read through 67 pages. Red Moon Rose, first 6 was... Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Yeah, there's about a 50-page difference from just the first 5 chapters, or 6 chapters before. Whatever. So it just blows my mind. It feels like I'm going a lot more faster than... I hope I didn't get rid of the tab. Whatever. It feels like I'm going faster, you know? I'm getting like a better reader. Don't get me wrong, I suck at reading, but still, it feels like I'm getting better. My orbments empty bag and package wrapped in an older magazine paper were laid out neatly on the table in front of me. The bracer sitting opposite of me gazed alternately at my face and the items on the table as if trying to gauge my reaction to them. Constantly rubbing his chin in his fingers, it appeared to me as though he were making an effort to display with his right hand, snugly fit within a leather gauntlet. Damn it. I had to have been let into the second floor of the lodge by the 2 men, and they had been painstakingly checked. And then, after they had painstakingly checked the layout of the floor, I was taken to the farthest room from the stairs. It occurred to me that the reason for the use of the makeshift space was due to there being no guild branch of it's nearby. I was taken to the farthest room from the stairs. It occurred to me that the reason for the use of the makeshift space was due to there being no guild branch nearby. The first man to sit in front of me was the lanky one. He told me his name, but I soon forgot which one was Clean and which one was Pavel. About the time I had finished being frisked, it's the bracer wearing in the gauntlets, Clayton or Pavel, whoever it was, returned and whispering something in his partner's ear. It seemed as though they were trying to locate Sister Cornelia, but having no luck. Here it is. And a cough drop. After much probing on the subject of her and the Jaeger Corps, and after relating everything I heard from her on the train, I had turned the conversation around and playing the role of the victim, inquiring into her past history. Though strictly speaking, I guess I was in fact the victim. Her name is Selnate, Ein Selnate. Read along the lanky bracer from a pocketbook he held just below eye level. Originally a constituent member of a Jaeger Corps, her present affiliations and activities are unknown. Wait, she was a part of a Jaeger Corps? That is interesting. Also, in case you guys want to know, just for the sure, you know. This is Ein Selnate. So, yeah. I mean, yes, but at the same time, I didn't expect her to be, like, affiliated with a Jaeger Corps. I knew she was a badass swordsman working for the church as their first dominion, if I remember correctly. But as far as a Jaeger Corps goes, I was not expecting that. I thought she was, like... How should I say this? Had more like a knightly family and more, was like, being a part of Arteria. She was naturally joined as a part of the church, or maybe some family members were part of the church. Well, too late now. Well, I mean, I already said that she was a part of the church being called Sister. Nightly and Ein. Yeah. Well, more like nightly background, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, moving on. In short, added his partner pompously, she's not the type of person any upstanding citizen should be getting involved with. He reached out his gauntlet at hand and picked up the object bundled in scrap paper. Checking my reaction all the while, he unwrapped the paper, laying it out flat in the center of the table. Its contents turned out to be a lump of metal ingrained with a sort of clay-like substance. Yeah, well, it slipped. It just slipped. I mean, it was Ein. Like, the way you worded that made it sound like this was to be expected, when to me it really isn't really expected. I expected something different. I blurted out I was on my way to a research institute with the item when everything happened, and threw in the address of some non-existent client for good measure. The bracers took notes, making sure not to leave out any of the details of our conversation. Then, to dispel any lingering suspicions, I agreed to stay with them under their watchful eyes for the night. The next day, I also found myself inclined to go along with them to the nearest guild branch in order to file a report about the events that happened at the station, but I had no qualms over the matter. My greatest concern at the moment, after all, was not running into any more trouble. She is badass, but come on, even you would have had... I'm sure even you were surprised to find out she was a part of a Jaeger Corps. Badass or no, not everyone's a part of a Jaeger Corps. I mean, hell, look at Aurelia. I mean, she's badass as hell, like one of the most frightening women on the entire planet, but she's not a part of a Jaeger Corps. Or at least as far as we're aware of. She wasn't a part of one. Or freaking Steel. She wasn't a part of a Jaeger Corps and she was still badass. Like, not every badass woman's gonna be a part of a Jaeger Corps. Maybe working with them for a specific mission or something is one thing, but like being a part of it is another matter. Aurelia is just Aurelia. That's the most... Yeah, that's the most fact thing ever, really. But still, my point remains. There was no way of knowing that Ein was a freaking former Jaeger member. That said, I am curious about where she stood in terms of ranks. Was like she the leader, or was like she a loyal, like second in command, third in command? Like what's going on there? I woke as the sun came up from the horizon and day broke with the advent of a peaceful morning. I sat up in bed with a sigh of relief. The bracers who had stood guard the previous night were no longer present in the room, but the sound of their voices could be heard echoing out in the hallway beyond the closed door. Slipping my arms through the sleeves of my jacket, I felt a sharp pain in my right elbow, which brought back vivid memories of the woman the day before. I'm just throwing examples out there. Would you rather me have her use her name? Would you rather have me use her name and say Steel? Because let's face it, Steel is a lot shorter than in her name, Aryan Road. Not spoiler, by the way, just throwing your name. Suddenly a feeling of uneasiness came over me, and still half undressed, I began adjusting my orbits. After opening its back cover, I used a thin piece of and dust skin. Hold on. Yeah. Dust skin and started plucking out the cords installed in each slot. It didn't take but 5 minutes to insert them each into a different slot and rearrange their configuration with a set of light magic as my base. One by one, I replaced each screw until finally the metallic panel was back in place, and as a feeling of calm almost set in, I rolled it back over in bed. I could see that, given that's a 250-year, like, it was, like, 250 years ago. But even still, I imagine, well, part of me thinks that they may have been around, but they weren't as well known as before. Like, I'm sure they were just referred to as mercenaries, and the term Jaeger Corps came down later, as some of them gained, like, a reputation and so on and so forth, you know? It was at this time that a tall woman appearing to be a maid opened the door carrying a basin of hot water for the sink, which guests could shave their, even wash their faces. After placing the smallest steaming tub up on the table, the woman went quietly about her daily task of removing the bed linen. Finding myself out from my own bed, I reluctantly headed toward the basin when just beyond the open door, I caught sight of 2 shadows cutting across the hallway in succession. "They're here," I heard myself mutter as the tone of my suppressed voice reached my ears. With only a bar of soap in hand, I remained unbelievably calm as I quickly shut and bolted the door. Then, pondering my next move, I stood still with my back pressed up against the wall. On the other side of the hardened clay wall, the brief clamor of fighting ensued. Fumbling with the chain attached to my hip pocket, I grabbed hold of the orbit I had adjusted just barely moments before. It was 2 bracers versus the 2 others I had seen moments ago. Throwing myself into the mix with the 2 men from the Bracer Guild, 2 men from the guild would definitely put us at advantage from a numbers standpoint. However, when I turned again and to face the door, the voice of self-doubt came imperilating through my closed lips in the form of a distant mutter. "There were only 2 of them," I murmured to myself. "If Sister Cornelia were to be believed, then one unit consisting of 3 people, not 2 again. Not 2. Again, I questioned myself inwardly, then where's the 3rd? The hair on the back of my neck stood on end as I realized my plight. Something swung down over the top of my head, catching me around the neck, and the next instant I was flung onto the ground. From the corner of my blurred and spotty vision came the inexplicable view of a woman with a demonic bloodshot eye standing over me, trying to wrench the very life out of me with a twist of the sheet she had wrapped tightly around my throat. From the corner of my blurred and spotty vision came the inexplicable view of a woman with demonic bloodshot eyes over me, trying to wrench out the very life out of me. Clutching my orbits in hand, I activated and firing off a burst of magic while laying sophisticated. I've never seen that. I feel like I know that word, but at the same time I don't. Google Translate, if you would please. Asphyxiated? Asphyxiated? Yeah, it's asphyxiated. It took me a second. Clutching my orbits in hand, I activated and firing off a burst of magic while laying half asphyxiated on the wooden planks of the room floor. The destructive vortex of compressed air sliced deeply into my hip, but at the same time caused the woman to double over before forcibly blowing her to another part of the room. Shreds of whirling line and spray with a fresh blood. Shreds of riling light and inflexed and sprayed with fresh blood blasted out through a gaping hole in the wall where a closed window once stood, leaving nothing behind but shards of broken glass and a frame rent and beyond all repair. 18, 15, 15, 17. Wheezing, I breathed in, the sound hot and whistling as the air fought to make it through my constricted windpipe. Still clutching tightly to my orbits, I unwound the sheets from my throat. What does it mean by sheet? Oh, the sheets from the bed. Okay, I'm assuming. I unwound the sheets from my throat, utterly exhausted. I tilted my head on its side and watched with reddened eyes as a small stream of saliva dribbled down over the edge of my mouth and pooled onto the floor. When fresh air finally made its way into my lungs, it initially choked me nearly as badly as the sheet had. A thump from somewhere behind startled me from on my lip. The Jaeger demoness, like a spring-loaded doll, leaped from the floor of the room. A single shot of magic I had previously landed in her gut should have done the trick, but the fluid way she had moved about made it appear as if she were unfazed by the blast. With arms reach of where I had subconsciously curled myself came the splintering sound of unseasoned wood being hewn down by a gigantic woodcutter's axe. In the following instant, Sister Cornelia came flying through a newly opened hole in the timber door, her entry punctuated by a cloud of splinters, her arms as pliant as whips. She passed by the female Jaeger in a lightning-quick motion, and with a turning assault, clocked her opponent full of tilt in the face. The woman spun with the force of the blow and fell with a tumultuous. Hey man, where's my water? I need water. Her head cracked hard against the floor like a prima ballerina. Sister Cornelia raised her knee high until she had tuckered securely up against her sternum. She started down at the outstretched figure of the floor. Muscles flexed, and without an ounce of mercy, Sister Cornelia let her judgment fall with the heel of her boot, stomping down and crushing the wretched woman's throat. Ouch! As I witnessed the grotesque and unsightly scene, Sister Cornelia gave me a quick glance in my direction and beckoned me on. Then, with a nimble hop into the unknown before her, she cleared the broken window frame, and I lighted to the ground below. Quickly scraping my belongings together, I made after her in the same manner as she had left, out of the window with a 2-story drop of the cobblestone side below. Waiting close by and helping break my less than elegant fall, Sister Cornelia led me on as we took flight along the avenue, brightly lit by the morning sun. A deafening blare from the orbital engine's whistle indicated that the first train was about to depart. Sister Cornelia immediately pulled a ticket out of her coat pocket and held it out for me from the side. Reaching for a fluttering strip of paper between her fingers, I realized that I was still carrying the bar of soap from before, or so I chucked it. Why would you carry that after all that? Not caring where it landed or who it might hit. I mean, is soap of, like, importance or something? Like... Aboard the train, the smoggy haze from the incense. I need another water. I need something to keep me going. I'll be right back. Alright, now I got some water and stuff in my system. I'm good to go. I also took some medicine. Help my cough. It won't react right away, but any luck, it should help my throat. Aboard the train, the smoggy haze from the incense smoking of the nattering gentleman had permeated into every nook and cranny of the passenger car. There was also the smell of newly printed publication and the occasional sound of someone clearing their throat. It felt rather awkward to have boarded a train bound for the Imperial City with my bag still in hand. Do you know what your problem is, Toby? Sister Cornelia remarked. You're just like that orbman of yours. Using her white handkerchief, she stanched the flow of blood from my leg, which had been lacerated by the spinning arrow blades of the magic. Once you get yourself into trouble, you keep digging yourself deeper until someone comes along with a billy club and whacks some good sense into you. Why does it make me think of the Flintstone for some reason? Placing a folded magazine on my lap, he tapped on it with the tail tip of her index finger, indicating that I should read what was inside. It was a copy of the Imperial Chronicle, which had been published just that morning. Excuse me. Was a copy of Imperial Chronicle, which was published that morning. A several-line article, buried pages behind more tilting news, told the suspicious death of one of the orbital factory owners somewhere within the capital. This was the first time I'd ever become aware of Mitch's real age. Huh? Sister Cornelia continued her lecture as she mercilessly upbraided me for my reckless behavior. You miss being caught up in all of this by a hair's breadth, she informed me coolly. At a loss for words over the shock of Mitch's death, I put the magazine away in my trench coat pocket. Another 5 minutes in the shop and you would have gotten to meet your maker too. So, wow, talk about boring. I mean, seriously? I knew that was a thing, like mixed side, but I expected more of like a, how should we say, a self-sacrificing death, or like a, but no, we get his death in his newspaper saying, hey, you died. Oh shit. I shook my head with... Oh. He kills himself? Huh. I shook my head with a trembled lips and my thoughts fumbled out of my mouth. I just don't get it. Why did Mick have to die? Images of Mick's cold body behind the counter alternated in my mind with a lump of metal out in my scrap paper. Just what the hell am I been carrying all this time? And why did anyone have to die over it? I pondered at length. Sister Cornelia met my eyes and held them. Because it's an artifact, she said simply. An artifact? I scoffed as I blew off her answer. It's not like I haven't carried a bunch of them before. Artifacts, in short, were the remaining legacy of an aged civilization, and the generic term for any unidentifiable mechanism which resembled that of an orbman. Not what I meant. Oh. I'd spent my days as a carrier smuggling any number of those items under a false pretense that the goods I was carrying were nothing more than the rare antiques and readily placed them in the hands of the aristocrats amongst whom they were especially in vogue. And for the most part, my current possession appeared as though it had belonged to the same group as the others. Personally, I couldn't find no other value in the collecting of these artifacts besides the indulgence of oneself in a decent hobby. Chiding me as if I were a clueless child, Sister Cornelia You're wrong, Toby. This one's much different than the others. After a moment's pause, she added, "It's alive." Sorry. I know she's got running all the time. Unable to grasp what she had meant, I looked at her with a questioning expression on my face. Sister Cornelia tried again. What I'm trying to tell you is that it still works, although I'm really not sure what kind of power it actually has. It was unearthed during an excavation with the Imperial territories about 30 years ago. Sister Cornelia's subsequent story about the peculiar lump of metal told the dark history surrounding a group of aristocrats who relentlessly sought after it. The artifact itself had transitioned from hand to hand by those in power, as one after another they were murdered while slumbering in their bedchambers. Then at the end of the 100 Days' War, its whereabouts were said to have been lost. Strangely enough, it's finally turned up in the capital after all this time, she said, and finished up the account. An announcement chimed in the passenger car notifying that those riding at the scheduled time of arrival. Sister Cornelia uncrossed and recrossed her long legs. The one who was after that artifact hired the Jaeger Corps to bring it to them, whatever the cost, so as a result, I was dispatched by the church in order to protect both you and it from falling into the wrong hands. I sat staring down at the bag resting next to my feet, and as we approached our destination, and the moving train quietly began to lose speed. Moving purposely through the crowd, we made our way between the rows of seats. I need to blow my nose. Just give me a sec. God, I can't breathe. Man. What a fool Mick has been. Wait. I didn't. Okay. Moving purposely through the crowd, we made our way between the rows of seats. Each time the swinging bat. Sorry. I didn't think you'd hear that over there. But I blew it pretty hard. It pretty much went to my nose. Just covered one nostril and just blew out. Wiped it off with a little towel I had over there, but still. Where was I? Each time I'm the swinging back in the hand and struck the side of my knee, I became neatly aware of its presence. It was an unnerving feeling, quite like I had unintentionally brushed up against someone in an unoffensive way. Furthermore, it was nearly inconceivable to my mind that the ancient relic the Jaeger Corps was pursuing with such a frenzy is sitting right here inside the stitched cloth of this cheap handbag. What a fool Mick had been. Hadn't he known the burden of this object would bring would be one far more weighty than both of us could have ever hoped to bear. I squeezed my eyes shut against the thoughts flying around my mind and addressed Sister Cornelia, who followed close behind me. Will we be making a break for the cathedral once we get off? Yes, that was the plan, she answered, scanning the scene outside the window of the passenger car. I think that's the only option we've got to make. If you want to make it through this day alive. The station where the train was set to arrive was unremediably crowded with a countless of passengers. And as usual, the sky was slightly overcast. Everyone outside the platform stood shivering in silence as their collar was drawn up their ears. Everyone outside the platform stood shivering in silence with their collars drawn up to their ears, huddled close to one another for warmth, like a flock of waterfowl out of the tidelands in midwinter. Don't worry, I won't be tossing you down a flight of stairs this time, Toby, jested Sister Cornelia. Although if there were 2 more of you at my disposal, I might have decided otherwise. Evidently, the numbers in our party this time had been rather dramatic increase. The odds don't appear to be in our favor, she said in a low voice. Her warm breath tickled the lobe of my ear. We won't be able to leave through the ticket gate. As soon as we stepped off the train, we stealthily moved to the opposite end of the platform, and after sneaking out of a large door for only authorized station of personnel, we jumped down onto the path of railroad tiles and steel ropes below. The bitter and cold wind of the capital swept freely across the unobstructed railroad tracks, causing me to shudder as if it ruffled our coats with its chilly touch. Slipping between the couplers of a pair of freight cars, we moved cautiously along the edge, sticking close to the shadows over the cargo. Let's go to the shadows. Over on the cargo platform, workers were busy unloading containers. Is that it for that page? Wow. For someone who had midnight set on becoming a dealer of pilfered goods, gaining illicit entry into the station. What chapter is this? 8. 3 more chapters after this. Gaining illicit entry into the station house would be one of the first of all basics. Showing my ticket, I spoke politely to one of the other workers, then, with a scenario picked out of my head, I sold it to him as I played the part of a manager here on business with a celebrity of notable repute. Midway through our conversation, I introduced Sister Cornelia, who did her best to show the man a glamorous smile and feminine pose. I had possibly gone a bit overboard when I had stated that she was an opera singer because the way she had carried herself made her look more akin to a low-wage sales song in a bar of drunkards. And in spite of all that, the worker graciously let us through. You're so good that it's almost scary, Toby, Sister Cornelia, as we raced through the station warehouse sector. You'd seriously consider doing another job, she went on. I bet you're gonna tell me to join the Bracer Guild, right? Come on, those guys would turn me down in a heartbeat, I said as I laughed off the thought. Then throwing the idea back in her court, I asked, so how about yourself? Why don't you join the Bracer Guild? Reaching the end of the warehouse sector, we came to a stop on a large chain link fence. Sister Cornelia crouched down and, while sliding a coverage to the side, laughed at my previous question as if I were insane. Are you kidding? She asked. They'd gun me down the second I set foot in the branches. What exactly did you do? I mean, yeah, you were a Jaeger, but what kind of Jaeger were you? Were you like the Red Constellation? Maybe the Northern Jaegers? Like, what kind of bracer were you? I mean, Jaeger were you? Granted, a Jaeger is a Jaeger, but I wanted to get a feel for her personality from, like, back then, you know? The winding, narrow stone tunnels like the one we were in and everywhere beneath the capital. We crawled along it as the tight... She was the worst kind of Jaeger? We crawled along as the light shining down through the drainage straight to the side of the road. She was the worst kind of Jaeger. A Jaeger. Wow, man, that's a terrible. I'd gun her down, really. Granted, I doubt I would even the second I would reach for my weapon to gun her down, my head would be already on the ground rolling. Like, I think she'd be. How should I say this? Ein is so Ein that she make fighting Aurelia as if it were like a. How should we say? Like a morning sparring session, really. That's a terrible comparison or similarity. You're like. Point is, Ein is Ein. Still, it blows my mind that she was a Jaeger. We crawl along the light shining down through the drainage gates on the side of the large road above has illuminated the way like a trail of flickering orbital lampposts. The feet of those walking along the avenue passed right by where we were, but not a single person noticed us scraping our way along below them. As for some strange reason or another, the world just beyond the thin flagstone paved road appeared so dazzling in my eyes, yet the Jaeger... What's going on? What is this? What the hell happened? There we go. Oh, come on. Damn it. Yet the Jaeger Corps lost of the artifact in hand in a senseless, sudden death, all of which had never crossed my mind before laying way for me to venture into the open world above. As we pressed on, I began to think that the small run-on tunnel which we were crawling through would run on forever, and finally merged with a high ceiling sewer surrounded by walls of countless blocks of chiseled stone. We'll go through here and make our way over to where the cathedral is located, Sister Cornelia insisted. Raising one brown, she pointed her finger upward. It's a lot safer down here than it is up there. That's fine and all, but where are we going to do if it gets attacked? Sister Cornelia grabbed my hand and with that stepped into the muddy darkness beyond. Don't worry, Tobia, she reassures me. Faith isn't the only thing faith isn't the only thing in supporting the church. Alright, I have about 49 pages left. Damn. The flickering of dying orbital lamps mounted at the equidistant lengths along the sewer wall sent thin streaks of light across the surface of the rippling flow of the filthy sewage. Passing in front of these one by one, Sister Cornelia sped down the stone sidewalk as the sound of her body cutting through the racing tunnel winds trailed up behind her. Panting and out of breath, I continued to move my feet toward the darkness which lay before me as I chased after Sister Cornelia's flickering shadow. Keep forgetting to do that. Wayward yet without a moment of response, we headed unrelentingly with our sights set on the cathedral of the Seppian Church. We moved swiftly across the moss-covered stone pavement, the clacking of our heels echoing in the dimly lit underground. Above ground, the walking distance on the city roads from the railway station to the cathedral was about 3 blocks. If we made our way up through the drainage ditch just beyond the sluice gate, we would find ourselves in the public square outside the massive sanctuary. Up ahead, the light of another orbital lamp came into view. Turning her head in my direction without a word, Sister Cornelia extended her right hand onward in a wide motion, indicating that we would be turning in that way at the next corner. Then, as if preparing for something, she rolled both her shoulders in a grinding motion and relieved the last of her attention with a pop of her neck. It seemed to me as though she knew all too well that I was lurking within the tenebrous conduit ahead. Under the unsteady and sporadic crustacean? I don't know what that word is. Under the unsteady and sporadic crustacean of the body of Sister Cornelia surged around a corner and disappeared from the view. 1, 2, 3 went at the galloping echoes, followed by the sound of something being rolled into the channel of filthy sludge. As I turned the corner, the first thing which leapt into my sight were the contorted figures of 2 men on the ground whom I barely missed treading on. Sister Cornelia, who was by this time several steps ahead, continued to run at her usual pace, as if nothing happened during the preceding seconds. As Cornelia came in angry, but a noticeably wavering voice from behind, I glanced to my rear to locate its source, and there I found a man who dragged himself from the fecal-filled liquid, now lying to his dead comrades, yelling with his dying breath as blood leaked out of his mouth. "Cornelia, she's down here!" he meant, as the crow before falling silent and still. Sister Cornelia paid no attention nor made any effort to look back. I turned my face forward and followed her example. The walls of the conduit leading directly to the sluice gate, it squared out in an ominous mouth of darkness, seemingly waiting for its next unsuspected meal. Sister Cornelia gradually slowed her pace to match mine as I had been, and this time completely exhausted and out of breath. "It looks like these guys are dead serious about getting their hands on this item this time," she said, as she focused her eyes on the darkness before us. "So were those men old friends of yours or something?" I inquired. Sister Cornelia turned to face me with her darkened scarlet eyes. "Is that what you heard from the bracers the other day?" she asked. I nodded my head and questioned her no further. With head slightly turned down, I forced myself onward, my eyes fixed on tips of my boots. Man, I really did good reading there for a second. Unexpectedly, Sister Cornelia opened her mouth and said, "Do you remember that woman you had a run-in with back at the inn?" I nodded slightly. "The whole reason I gave up my life as a mercenary is because I didn't want to meet a tragic end like that," she continued. "A life of no meaning forgotten by all." I looked up at Sister Cornelia and, seeing a slight show of emotion on the side of her face, heard her repeat the same line a few times before finishing her thought. If I'm going to cash in my life's chips, then I think it's best that I fight for something worth fighting for. At least that way I'd be able to leave a legacy of my existence behind. Taking in her words, I ran steadily beside her as I felt a sense of nondescript apprehension slowly began to creep over me. During the short intervals between breaths, it suddenly seemed as if I were hearing the faint sound of sloshing water from behind, which caused me to prick up my ears and turn my head in its direction. "So you noticed it too, huh, Toby?" Sister Cornelia slowed her step until finally coming to a complete stop. They've blockaded us from behind, so there's no turning back now," she said, the irons of our situation heavy in her voice. We'd arrived at an intersection where the conduit we were in and another cross paths, and just beyond the wide fitted flow of sewage water before us, I could see the dimly lit sluice gate. I placed my back against the damn bricks of the nearest wall, and for a moment I tried to catch my breath. "They're probably lying in wait for us," Sister Cornelia assessed this stolidly after glaring across the flowing sewage of the merged channels, and then turning her head to the rear and narrowing her eyes again. "And unfortunately this time we won't be able to circumvent them." With a sound of composure revealing her utmost resolve, Sister Cornelia took in a few deep breaths. I laid a hand on my ornament, gripping it in the palm of my sweaty hand, and then wrapped the strap on my back securely around my opposite wrist. And as that, Sister Cornelia checked her boot before standing upright. Then, taking a few steps back and holding my breath, I raced forward and darted into the Stygian flow of waste. Man. How long has it been? An hour and 30. Damn. What is that? Give me a break. Oh. It's fine. Alright. Sister Cornelia made such haste as she aimed. Hold on. Sister Cornelia made such haste as she aimed for the opposite side of the sludge-filled channel that I've sworn she was actually running on the liquid surface. Based on my observation of the minuscule spatters of her feet produced, and of course she passed by me in the blink of an eye, the pace growing wider and wider between us as I continued to trudge my way through the filthy muck. Flashes of magic erupted from the darkness by the slowest gate and ripped through the air in rapid succession, but none of them could overtake the speed at which Sister Cornelia moved. An unyielding offensive by the shadowed aggressors, the settled pestilence in the depths of the channel was thrown up in the form of a powerful tsunami, and in the instant before clearing myself from its destructive path, I feared that the terrible wall of sedimented filth will crash me under its weight and bring me to an unsightly end. With mid-air spin, and to avoid the last of the oncoming magic, Sister Cornelia flew to the opposite side of the channel with incredible speed, hurdling the wall of piled-up sandbags behind which the attackers took cover. She whirled her arms in ferocious onslaught, one by one, like a row of pins being struck by a weighted object. The line of standing Jaegers crumbled to the ground. Sister Cornelia's attackers were like whirlwind of death, blurry with the speed at which they were struck. They came in advancing at inconceivable angles, puncturing throats, slashing open arteries, and then they were gone. So it was that when I finally reached the cobbled path beyond the stagnant channel, not a soul was left standing beside Sister Cornelia and myself. The cathedral is at the end of the ladder just beyond this gate, she indicates as she flickered, dripping blood from her fingers like a child who forgot a handkerchief to dry her wet hands. Her eyes shone with the afterglow of battle. The Jaegers can't be far behind, so we better hurry, she warned. And as if to punctuate her warning, the damp sound of numerous feet kicks picking up water as they advanced toward our present location had now become clearly audible to my ears. Stepping over the handful of Jaeger corpses lying scattered about the wall of sandbags, we made our way for the dry bed channel which lay ahead of us. I placed my hands on slightly damp stone floor of the empty channel and crawled through the half-open door of the sluice gate. Falling water droplets struck the nape of my neck as I passed through the cramped opening, causing me to stop dead in my tracks. In the moment that followed, I recognized the sound of the orbit overhead, on the verge of discharging a burst of magic. "Toby!" came the obstinable voice of Sister Cornelia as my vision was instantly flooded with a wave of exceeding brightness. Then in the midst of the world of blinding light came the hand of a savior which grabbed me firmly by the shoulder. powerful feeling of being dragged in the explosion produced by magic rupturing stone were almost simultaneous. As the booming roar swept across the whole of my body, I was thrown backwards towards the ground. Despite my clouded vision, I managed to a somersault before landing in the prone position. Choking on the filthy puddle I had fallen face down in, I lifted my head in time to see a cloud of damn it. I lifted my head in time to see a cloud of blackened dust being heaved from the mouth of the hallway raised to its gate door. As if all my worst nightmares had become reality, I watched as one after another the blockading Jaegers emerged from the small oaky cloud, each bearing a glittering blade. I floundered about one of the slippery mud and watched as their ranks sprang into action and closed in. The rugged facial features now visible to my eyes. Instantly rolling to the side, I unsheathed my hidden blade as I attempted to deflect a wide-arching slash of another with my bag. The cloth of the bag over which the sharp end ran split open with a sound, and the paper-wrapped orbman fell into the cobbled floor. Frantically, I searched for the orbman at my side, but I was unable to grip on it, and because of my clumsy, panic-stricken state. One of the mercenary men, his eyes intent on my throat, threw back his long sword to end my life. Before he could make his move, a dark silhouette appeared from behind him. It was Sister Cornelia. Her hands moving with such finesse, disarming the man in an instant, and left only his sword behind before he was launched from a view into the hanging shadows veiling the dank conduit. As the sound of the falling sword struck the ground with a high-pitched clang, Sister Cornelia dropped up to her knees. Her soft, whispering voice were full of regret. "I'm sorry, Toby." With her head bowed forward, I watched in disbelief as several streaks of blood began to run down the side of her. "Ooh! It looks like the gods may be calling you home too," she said gently. Once again, Sister Cornelia rose to her feet, her coat hanging in tatters, eyeing her outer garment's ragged state. I knew for certain that it had been caused by the previous blast of magic. In order to protect me from harm, Sister Cornelia had willingly used her body as a shield to absorb the blunt of the force. And now a strain of aversing crimson blood had begun to seep through the cloth covering her breast. I rubbed up the artifact which had stumbled to the ground from the whole of my back. I swiped up the artifact which had tumbled to the ground from the hole in my severed bag and tore away the wet paper which covered its surface. Then, with the cold lump of metal in hand, I placed it atop of my orbman as I gripped them both tightly together. The sound of footfall from the Jaeger Corps had by now subsided. They stood in a cluster with their swords drawn, effectively blocking any possible escape through the sluice gate. Sister Cornelia let out a shrill cry, and as if taking the sound of it to be a command to attack, unleashing the energy pent up within my orbman. The device roared, and at the instant the magic was discharged, I felt an intense wave of searing heat raise over my cheeks as my entire body was immensely blown backwards by its powerful force. Stunned, I collapsed onto the floor. Finally, when I forced my eyes open, I see Sister Cornelia standing above me, with her back turned to face me. Her right arm had lost all strength to function and hung limply at her side. Dazedly, she slid to her knees and slumped onto the ground before me. I pulled Sister Cornelia close to myself and, hugging her tightly, blasted the pack of assailing mercenaries with an instantaneous wave of magic. But then it was all over, my last stand ending as soon as it began. The countless razor-sharp sword's tip started down as it stared at us from all sides. Convinced that I had reached my life's terminus, I raised my right hand and while placing a false hope in my ornament that it would somehow protect us, I activated it. The last of its energy being consumed as if it was drained empty. Whirling arrow blades spun around us, and as I closed my eyes and accepted my fate, and being darkened eyelid, an endless realm of whiteness began to spread out before me. Whew. Man. This is the final chapter, but we're getting into the end here. I gotta admit, now isn't exactly, it's a good book, but not really one I'm enjoying. Like, don't get me wrong, there's some good bits, but compared to Red Moon Rose, this isn't all that good. My opinion, though. Maybe this last chapter will change my mind. I was swallowed by the light only to be spewed moments later onto a patch of hardened ground. The air was filled with a scent of sun-baked earth. Sun-baked earth, yet for being the floor of some grandiose heavenly estate inherited by those in the afterlife, it felt quite like the flagstone I had grown accustomed to in my past life. Oh yeah. I'm glad you're with me on that one. Like, Red Moon Rose was fantastic in all accounts. Granted, I knew Rose, but upon feeling around my immediate surroundings, my urging hand found soft locks of disheveled hair. Cornelia's at the bottom? I haven't read many of the books, but in my opinion, Black Records tied with, and it's kind of hard to say which was over the other one, Red Moon Rose and then Cornelia. What's your order, Matt? Like, which books are your favorite? Upon feeling around my immediate surrounding, my hair and head, and found soft locks of disheveled hair, it seemed as though Sister Cornelia had come as well as I to meet our Creator firsthand. Gradually, as I lay there, I felt something warm swell within the pit of my stomach. Weary and spent, I just let a feeling spread over me. It was at this moment the sound of murmurous voices started to fill the air around us. Warm breath tickled across my nose and letting me know that I was being stared at directly in the face. As my eyes adjusted to the intensity of the light, I realized that I was looking into the face of a young girl who beamed back at me brightly with the widest of smiles. However, she seemed a bit young to hold the esteemed position of the goddess. Yeah. Still. Come on. The needle of a bell overhead had rang out loud and clear. Strangely, it had sounded exactly like the cathedral's distinctive toll. Taking in the series of events to be rather odd, I picked myself up and at last awakened from the dream which had temporarily evaded my senses. There I was, the familiar cityscape, the sounds and the events of the sounds, and even the scent of the breeze. I knew the place by heart. It was the public square of the imperial city which which unfolded before the great cathedral of the Septian Church. I opened fingers of my right hand and stared down at the metallic lump in its palm, entrusted to me by Mick. Golden filaments of light swirled across the surface of the artifact. I instantly recalled Sister Cornelia's words. "It's alive," she said. As I watched the ancient light gradually fade away before closing up my hand and around its surface once more, I believed it. Supporting each other by wrapping our arms around one another's shoulders, Sister Cornelia and I hobbled and limped our way toward the magnificent cathedral as the awe-inspiring figure of the goddess Adio stood silently with unfurling wings which watched over us from the deep-hued stained glass window above. And as for the events which followed, they were all settled in an orderly fashion. The metallic lump which Sister Cornelia had so dazzlingly risked her life for was turned over to His Eminence, the Cardinal, who presided over the cathedral. He disappeared with it through the thick open door of a sacred vault. A level of corruption which had spread like a plague among members of the imperial court, influential aristocrats, and even a commission of officers in the imperial army astonished those mediators acting on behalf of the Bracer Guild. I stayed close by Sister Cornelia as she was laid out on a pew with a chapel of the cathedral. The real sisters of the church delicately pulled off her coat and cut open her vest, now struck to her body with dry blood upon doing so. They found an ornate shirt of chainmail just beneath the layer of her clothing, which for some reason seemed to bewilder them all. The next day, a certain aristocrat who had hired the Jaeger Corps to carry out this selfish bidding agreed to relinquish the artifact in his possession in return for keeping his estate. Hence, his collection of forbidden antiques were brought under the safekeeping of the Septian Church. Sworn to secrecy, I made immediate arrangements to take leave for the Calvert Republic, my destination a high-class resort which turned out to be an excellent way to recover physically and mentally, as well as forget about the series of events which had occurred over the past few days. Naturally, the Bracers assigned to provide my escort were none other than Clayton and Pavel, who before we left, guided me without a word to where Sister Cornelia was resting. I talked with Sister Cornelia, who had awoken from her short interval, but as I got up to leave, she reached out her dainty hand and said to me, "Before you go, I want to tell you my real name. It's Ein Selny." I took her unblemished hand in mine and gripped it firmly as I expressed my appreciation for what she had done. And today, for 3 years later, I stood staring at her name once again, but this time printed on a page of the Imperial Chronicle, Ein Selny. Below those printed characters and the few lines of the unembellished article. Unembellished article? Another word I used. Yesterday, a corpse was discovered in an urban area of the capital just before dawn. The body was found to be covered with multiple stab wounds. The departed in life had been involved in charitable work and brought salvation to many afflicted souls in various regions throughout the land. Is it saying Ein is dead? As I read the last line, I envisioned the deceased figure of Sister Cornelia lying motionless upon a darkened street. Yet despite the blood-stained face I envisioned in my mind, I saw her as she rested in peace, a gentle smile crossing her face and vindicated of any transgressions in life. As I rolled up the copy of magazine in hand, I brushed my hand lightly across the shining bracer emblem pinned on my chest. Almost 2 years had passed since I converted to my new line of work, which Sister Cornelia had so graciously recommended to me. And finally, I had even becoming used to my real name. And finally, I had even become used to using my real name. Toby came in the It's... Oh. Toby came in the whisper of Sister Cornelia as it resurrected in my ear. Not only known as Toby, I pressed my forehead up against the cold, clouded window of the passenger car. The refulgent eyes of Sister Cornelia was shining brightly like a carnelian stone, forever ingrained in my memory. In my mind's eye, I watched as her coat sleeve trailed out behind her as she dashed away into the darkness of my memory. Opening my eyes, I gazed out through the window glass, and there I saw the bleeding rose-colored illumination of the Imperial City as it faded beneath the heavy white fog. The end. Okay, that was Red Carnelia. I mean, just Carnelia. Why am I saying Red Carnelia? So, that was the book I promised to read for you, Matt. You're welcome, by the way. Not one of my books. Not one of my favorite books. I might... Nah. Well, maybe. Possibly? I wouldn't bet on it. I thought about, like, I guess it wouldn't hurt to say, like, I thought about reading Gambler Jack. Because if I'm being honest, Matt, I really didn't watch your video, so I really don't know what actually happens. Because you just showing your face, I couldn't exactly keep up with what was going on. So I really didn't bother, you know. It was enjoyable, yes, but at the same time, I didn't really like the book. Like, Mick died just being mentioned in the newspaper, and Ein died by multiple stab wounds, I'm assuming from the same Jaeger Corps that was after us. Or likely from someone else. Sorry. But yeah, I wouldn't bet on it, but I wouldn't mind doing like a... What is it? Gambler Jack, yeah, I wouldn't mind reading Gambler Jack at some point. If it means, like, stalling for time in terms of streaming, really. Whew. But yeah. Yeah, I'm aware she's alive. I'm aware she's, like, I'm pretty sure I brought up Ein before with you. Yeah, it doesn't matter who killed her in the book, but even still, like, it's pretty stupid how she went out. Like... It's like... I fail to see how it got popular as far as a short thrill novel. Like, that's genuinely... It's a short thrill. But yeah. I made good on my promise now, so that's that. If you guys like this novel, or if you like live stream in general, feel free to hit the like button, comment, subscribe, join my Discord server in the description below, or get some names to see me stream. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and all that good stuff. Next week will be the final stream for Cold Steel 2. I'll be racing through to the end, and I will not stop until I finish it. Okay. Well, I didn't know that, but still. Anyhow, I'll see you guys all next time, and it'll be the end of Cold Steel 2, and like I said before, Cold Steel 3 is gonna be a while. I might do the prologue, and only the prologue, but I won't get into like any big chapters until I actually beat the game. So, yeah. But anyway, guys, I'll catch you guys all later, and see ya!